Welcome to Your Strata Property, the podcast for property owners looking for reliable, accurate, and bite-sized information from an experienced and authoritative source.
Hello and welcome to this week's podcast episode. I'm your host, Strata lawyer Amanda Farmer, and my guest this week is Luke Woolard. Luke is the managing director and founder of Pilot Body Corporate, based in Mornington, Victoria. With over 17 years' experience in strata management, Luke is recognised for his dynamic approach to business and his original creative thinking. Luke established Pilot to address gaps in the body corporate management market. And specifically, what caught my attention, and the reason I invited Luke onto the show, is that he's on a bit of a mission. And that mission is to break up with big strata. What does that mean? Luke and I get into that in this chat. Pilot has been recognised with a number of industry awards, including the 24-25 SCA Australasia Strata Community Management Small Business Award, and the same award in 2024 with SCA Vic. In this chat, we talk about the particular challenges facing our Victorian owners, why it's time to rethink strata and strata management, and what it is that Pilot Body Corporate is doing to distinguish itself from the competition. I'll take you over now to my chat with Luke Woolard. Luke Woolard, welcome to the show.
Hi, Amanda. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you today? Coming to us from Mornington Peninsula, I believe.
We are doing well. Unfortunately, winter's upon us down here, so it has been a nice run of beautiful weather up until now.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, it's about time we got into some winter woolies, I'm going to say. Luke, let's start with your story, your backstory. What led you into the world of strata management? What inspired you to start Pilot?
Yeah, so I just have a thing. I really love being my own boss and running my own businesses. So that's pretty much what I've done always. But I began my real estate career in 2006, and that actually started on the Gold Coast with my own real estate agency, despite having no previous experience. And that actually introduced me to the world of body corporates and like the fundamentals of that. So during that time, I sold many an apartment, as you would imagine on the Gold Coast. That's pretty well what you get. And we had various investment properties of our own and that sort of thing. So I learned the structure of the whole body corporate world from there. But in 2011, we had moved back to Melbourne because of, we started a family, my wife and I, and I'm originally from Melbourne and the Mornington Peninsula. So we founded Pilot as a general real estate agency. And I'll be totally honest with you, I didn't know what else to do. I was going to get a job. I thought, that's not really me. I'm just going to start up again. So it was just a general real estate business handling sales, rentals, and later on strata management. And I kind of fell into it. And that's kind of the running joke. How did you fall into strata management? So for many years, I was like a jack of all trades in real estate. I pretty well worked across every kind of real estate you can imagine, from my own developments to rentals, commercial rentals, sales of anything I could get really. And it wasn't until about 2019 that I really narrowed our direction as a company. So we'd pivoted into solely doing strata management, and took a year or two to sort of wean ourselves off the rest of the stuff. We had actually got out of the rental property management a few years prior. And it was just that we had to make a choice to head in one direction. And that renewed focus has resulted in our business expanding and increasing the size of the team, the portfolio, receiving industry awards, which is lovely recognition. And that's the backstory, basically.
Interesting. You've come from real estate, done a little bit of strata, and then 2019 making that decision to only focus on strata. You had to choose one thing. I'm interested in the choice that you made, that you chose strata and not selling or property management. It was only the other day I was talking to one of the members inside our online community, and he was saying, oh, Amanda, strata managers, they're just failed real estate agents. They couldn't run a real estate agency, so they decided to go into strata. Why would they choose strata? That's, they make a lot more money being real estate agents. Well, here you are. You've made that decision to choose Strata. Tell me why that was the one to choose and not sales and management.
Okay, let's dispel a few of those myths along the way. So, strata management is actually harder than general real estate. It's much harder to do than real estate sales from you need a lot more capacity to know a lot more rather than just being good with people and being good with sales and marketing. You need to know a lot of different legislation. You need to be a bit of an engineer, a bit of an accountant, a bit of a problem solver, a bit of a people person. So I think that just fit my personality and the personalities of our team better than just churning the sales. It gets a bit monotonous, and I hate working weekends. And I mean, if you're in real estate, there's really no choice. I mean, there's been times when I had to drive into halfway to the city to get a contract signed on a Saturday night at like 9 p.m. because that was apparently the only time that people could meet to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're a small business owner in real estate, you have to do these things sometimes to survive. So actually, as well, strata management is a much better business. Now, I think we might end up talking about insurance commissions later, but if you want to, but there was a time.
I always want to. Let's make sure that's on the list.
Yeah, well, there was a time when we made more off insurance commissions than in one year than our entire rent roll of about 40 properties. And I reckon the rental property management was probably, 80% more work than the body corporate insurance. So from a business point of view, it didn't really stack up. A lot of property agencies without the big rent rolls, they're just sort of subsidizing their costs with their rent roll. So they just sort of have it on the side, and that's not really conducive to like providing good service if that's your attitude to what you're doing for your clients. You just got it there to support the sales business a bit. Now, there are times when you can make big money in sales in real estate. I'm sure a lot of people who know the industry are aware of that. You can literally make a fortune in a day if you're lucky. And sometimes that is luck, especially when you're selling new properties, because it's all just supply and demand, economics, that sort of thing. There's nothing you can really control there. You can just be good at your job. But actually, I think strata management is a really solid business, and that's supported because you don't often see them up for sale, those type of businesses. They're quite rare in our area, at least. So I don't think they're failed real estate agents. I think overall the community is just a lovely bunch of people that just wanted some more regularity in their lives. And and there's probably had good reasons for getting out of real estate sales. A lot of people burn out of that industry pretty quickly. I did it for a long time, but I'm glad I don't do it anymore.
Well, Luke, Pilot Body Corporate is built around a bold idea, and that idea, as I understand it, was to break up with big strata. Can you unpack what that means and why it's been important for you at Pilot to take that stand?
Absolutely. So this is I think it's like a significant initiative for us. And we're trying to restore some goodwill in the industry following all this Four Corners negativity, that the fallout of that episode that focused on insurance charges and strata management. And look, there's good reasons that was on television. However, everyone kind of gets tarred with the same brush when there's a negative situation and there's the spotlight's on. So actually it became clear to me that there's some changes necessary to sort of achieve this goal. And it wasn't until very recently that I was at a conference in Hobart and I was sitting there thinking, why are we as an industry fighting so hard for this insurance commission stuff? If I was starting the business tomorrow, would I set it up that way to have our fee structures including commissions? Shouldn't we just be proving our worth with our fees and doing more to explain those to clients? So why are we holding on to these old ways? And as an industry, they're really going after them. But I don't take anything for granted in my life. And I think the only thing that's certain is like change itself. So when we say we're breaking up with big strata, that means no more insurance commissions ever. And our clients need transparency, not kickbacks. It's more work to have an insurance commission from our point of view as a company because there's more disclosures, it's just more explaining it, talking about it. It's just complicated. And our clients mostly, they're not business people, they're just homeowners. So we think it's important We're not like the bigger companies. We want to keep it simple. We don't want bloated, confusing fees, hidden agendas, supplier throwbacks. We just want management that puts our owners first forever. And that's why we're saying we're breaking up with Big Strata. So hopefully it sets a trend and we can all get on board with that one.
Yeah, look, all of that sounds inherently sensible to me. And I am surprised that I don't hear more managers, particularly those leading the smaller to medium-sized businesses, coming out and saying exactly what you've just said. I mean, it's just such a clear message, such an obvious message in this climate, I would think. What is it? Why are you going to conferences and still hearing managers bang on about how we can save our commissions? What are they scared of? What do they think they stand to lose?
I think the commissions are like the profit of the business.
Yeah.
And so if they feel like that's being threatened, maybe that's why they're trying to hang on to that without making a change. But as businesses grow, they get a bit lackadaisical. We don't want to ever be lazy. We want to be agile. So changing stuff is hard. And I think some people are just like, well, why should we change it if we don't, why don't we just lobby and start talking about it, make a lot of noise? And sure, I don't think it's fair to just change something overnight on a whole industry from a government point of view. I think that it definitely needs to be like something phased in if commissions are going to go. And I do think they're going to go. So we're preparing for that. And the people that don't prepare for that, they're the ones that won't be able to operate their businesses. It just won't be worth it for them. So I think people are scared of protecting their revenue streams, but they're not sort of looking at it like, well, how do I just explain what I'm actually doing? I can't do it for that sort of bare minimum fee without a commission, and just put it in front of them. Say, this is what you've been paying us anyway. And we're proposing to change that. And there's actually a win for the consumer in there, because they'll pay less transfer duty on the insurance policy. If the insurers have a few bad years, and let's face it, nearly every year is going to be a bad year for insurers in this climate. There's natural disasters all the time now. So the cost of insurance will outpace the cost of professional services, I think. And, if we can bring a bit of sensibility back to our fee structures, then I don't think anyone's going to lose out, in all honesty. I think it's the way forward. So I'm determined to get this going, and it's going to be a bit of work explaining it all, but
look, I love that you're on the front foot. I think if any business is operating from a position where your profit is in your insurance commissions, that's not a business. It's not a good business, not a great business. And it is time to start looking hard at that and trying to get ahead of this, as you are doing, Luke.
Yeah.
We don't often have Victorian strata managers here on the show, or those waving the flag for Victoria, I'm going to say. So it's a bit of a rare treat to have you here. So I want you to put me in the loop. Fill us in. What's going on down there? What are the challenges that are facing owners in Victoria? Specific challenges for managers as well?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this, and I've actually was talking to my team about it, because it's just like a constant feedback loop we like to have with the team. And what we think are the biggest challenges right now down here are, there's a cost of living crisis, I think, everywhere in Australia, but it really is hitting hard here. And it's been going on for a couple of years. And, it's not just housing, it's like groceries and everything, really. We hear stories from lots of lot owners who struggle to pay their contributions or their fees, probably what you might call strata fees. I think we call them contributions as well. They're finding it a bit harder. A few more are in that situation where they're just, unable to pay, and there's a bit more going on there. So that's difficult because that's not really in our control. I mean, you can tender services every other week, but overall things have increased in price a lot in the past sort of like 4 or 5 years down here, considerably, especially in building repairs and maintenance. So that's one thing that's really hurting. The other things I think make it difficult down here, because we do deal with a lot of different things as an owners corporation management business. So it's hard to educate the owners on everything because it's just a vast thing. So we do our best and we publish, fact sheets and things, and all different stuff for our owners, but it is very complicated. And every time there's a legislation change, it's not just owners corporation legislation, it's like a related legislation or insurance policy change. It's an educational challenge and an opportunity. So we're trying to help with that. Like, we've got a little AI trained chatbot on our website, and
Cool.
we've trained it on the legislation, the various legislations, and most of the time it comes out with the right answer. Not always, but we're monitoring those discussions so we can train it even further. So hopefully that, those sort of initiatives help. And for managers, actually, like, it's managing client expectations in this world of where everything's, on speed dial, to use an old-fashioned term. And one of my clients sent me this article, like, to support us, I think. It was really good. It was a few years old. I hadn't seen it, and it was like an anecdote about how many strata managers it takes to change a light bulb. So it was like a humorous article, but it suggested that it was like one manager doing the work of 15 people. And it went through all the different steps involved, from when someone reports an issue to getting someone to change the light bulb and, approving the invoice, making sure the work's done, paying it, all that stuff, everything that occurs in between. And how many light bulbs or different types of things do we deal with in one building every single day? And then you multiply that by maybe 40 properties or something. And it's like helping people understand that. And I think part of that, honestly, is working on our fee structures for what we do as well as an industry, so we can have more people, because we're only going to need more resources and people in this industry, as well as, developing different AI to help along the way, that sort of stuff.
Now, Luke, you mentioned there, having to be across changing legislation, and it's not just strata legislation that changes, other legislation. And if I'm right, it was the beginning of this year that Victoria essentially adopted a position that we've had here in New South Wales for a while now about short-term letting and holiday lets, and allowing buildings to, tell me if I'm wrong, but create rules that would prevent owners from short-term letting. Is that something that you've interacted with yet as a manager with any of your buildings, being interested in that, adopting that? What's going on in Victoria when it comes to short-term letting from your perspective?
We're like the Port Douglas of the south here on the Mornington Peninsula. We definitely don't have the weather, but we have a similar sort of a holiday. It's a bit of a regional economy, but it's more of a holiday sort of destination, retirement destination as well. Mm-hmm. So there is a bit of holiday letting, I think, on the peninsula, if I'm right. There was, a few years ago at least, there was about 40,000 homes that were available for that purpose.
Right.
So it's quite a few. It might be not the right number, but we can check that later. But yeah, there's quite a few homes down here that utilise holiday letting. So we put that information out to our clients when they were introducing this legislation that you mentioned. And for the buildings that have a high proportion of holiday letting in places like Sorrento, which is a beautiful beachside little historic town down the end of the peninsula here, there was radio silence about that. Yeah. The possibility of banning holiday letting. So for other buildings where there's a bit of a mix and mostly owner occupiers, there is a bit of an interest, but not a lot of take up yet. So there's quite a bit of work to do to get people on side with that. It's a special resolution, meaning 75% of the owners have to agree to that one, or at least half agree and no more than a quarter disagree. So I do think it would become more relevant, because some people don't want that going on in the building when they're predominantly permanent sort of residential properties. It does create a bit of issue, I think, if it's not managed well.
Yeah, and I think we do see a bit of a lag in the take-up when we have these new avenues, new opportunities to regulate issues in strata buildings and owners corporations. Our legislation allowing buildings to pass bylaws banning short-term letting specifically for investor owners, not for owner occupiers. That legislation, if I'm correct, came in about 2021. It's now 2025, and I still get owners asking me, Amanda, how can we deal with this problem? And I say, well, you're aware that we have this provision in our legislation. You can make a bylaw. This is how it would work. We're years down the track. So I'm not surprised that something that started early this year in Victoria, you don't have much take up yet, and you're probably still going through that education process. But it is interesting to watch how this reform rolls out across the country. And often it does start in places where we have more apartments, more people, places like New South Wales, Queensland, and then we see the take up in other states. So that's why it's so important that we keep talking to each other and we get together as colleagues nationally and share these challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think New South Wales kind of leads the way with legislation as far as strata and building, from what I've noticed. So Victoria kind of lags along. And yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens in, say, like Perth, where you have a lot of fly in, fly out type workers and that sort of thing. I don't know if they're facing similar issues, but it seems to be more like the issues that the owners really don't want to be dealing with, like parties and damage, short term letting occupiers damaging common property, whether advertently or intentionally. So, but yes, watch this space, I think.
Yeah, sounds good. Luke, what do you say is the most urgent or most important change that needs to be happening in the sector right now? You might have already hit on this. Maybe it's insurance commissions have got to go. If not that,
They've got to go. But
yeah.
I think actually what needs to happen here in Victoria, and I don't know how we can tackle this, or help with it. I actually think it's better building practices. And from what I understand and have learned, it's like they need to have more site supervision. So rather than just letting all the tradies go show up and do their thing and run services over the top of other services that shouldn't be affected and things like that, there needs to be people like substantially on site supervising the trades like in the old days. And I don't know why there aren't, because they're making a lot more money these days off building apparently. But I think that's something that could be definitely just like quality control and best practices, because there's so many times when every single apartment building, literally every single apartment style building we manage has been affected by some form of defects, usually with regards to fire safety items. Passive fire protection is a big one. So they're just not getting it. Like the people who are doing the work, they probably have to make decisions that they probably need to get someone higher up to make a decision on, maybe. Or so then it's probably enhancing education for people that do this work. And I know like down here they have like the waterproofing side of things they've really worked on, because that's a big one for everyone in Australia probably, defective waterproofing. And the consequences of that are just so severe, like it just causes so much damage when waterproofing doesn't work. But look, I don't know if it's stricter penalties for non-compliance or more sort of regular education for people, licensing, just to make sure people are up to date with everything, or just following the directions on the building product label when they're building. But we certainly find like defective buildings is a hard one, because the owners often get left with the decision to, well, do we try and pursue this builder if they're still around, or do we just have to, go through the motions and shell out like a couple of $100,000 to fix something? And it's a tough thing because they don't understand that. Like they don't understand how they got there, or why they're being told you've got a problem with your building, but someone has actually approved that building at some level. And, why wasn't that picked up earlier, or did it even have to be looked at by the certifier? It's very confusing and complicated, and unfortunately expensive for the owners, who ultimately get left with the bill if it's a common property defect. But yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah. It's another example of where one state can learn from the hard lessons of the other. And, it does beg the question, how is it that this is a problem that we're still talking about and have been talking about for 20, 30 years? Why hasn't it been fixed and being fixed nationwide? New South Wales has been through major reform in this area with our now former Building Commissioner David Chandler, new legislation in a variety of different forms attempting to address a lot of the things that you're now speaking to, Luke, and saying, you're putting up your hand going, it's happening down here as well. Can we have some of that? Look, I think some of that probably is on the horizon for Victoria. But, just because you happen to own an apartment in a different state, you have to suffer for that little bit longer while the state government, your respective state government, gets its act together. That's really painful.
Yeah, and the building industry is so important in Victoria. I'm not sure about the stats for other parts of Australia, but I think indirectly it employs like 1 in 10 people. So they're very protective about the building industry, and for a good reason. But look, I'm just going to go and say it. Like, we can do better. so
Yep.
so let's work on that, and then we won't all have these conflicts of buildings having major problems and trying to get someone to fix it, and people refusing and saying it's not a problem and whatnot. I mean, if water's coming through the roof, then there's an issue there.
Luke, our listeners are owners, they're committee members, they're managers, other industry players. What is one thing that you would like them to rethink about Strata?
I think it would be great if people can reconsider like this traditional approach to management, and this like pushing of all these emails to the manager about this or that, eye-wateringly high rates of emails. A manager might get 100 emails a day. That seems to be pretty consistent as well from what I hear from other managers. And, I would hope people would recognize benefits of like streamlining that through different digital approaches. So what we've been doing in that area is like we've been creating these standardized forms for all different types of requests, the repetitive type of requests for different things, like maintenance requests, even simple things like a proxy form that we send out with our meeting notices. We often have people that call up after they get one to ask us for the form again. So
Yep.
we've created forms where they can just literally, like, less than a minute, jump on, sign it online, then we get the proxy form. So if they haven't, if the original agenda wasn't a great package for them to be able to do that, we're trying to make it easier, in other words. And we are hopeful that'll work. And we're doing a lot more electronic voting for the last few years than we ever did. For lot owners, though, I think it's really important that we help them understand the manager isn't like the decision maker on everything. So on everything that happens in their strata or their building, we are their chief instruction taker of the owners corporation. So we might have some delegated authority to do certain things, but most of the time that doesn't extend to like fixing a major building issue. It's just not in our power. So we need the owners corporation to make the decisions, and then we can carry them out. That is a common misunderstanding between lot owners and owners corporations, I guess. So when there's something bigger happening, we'd like committees to consider getting more on the front foot with issues that, even if they're not affecting them directly, it will affect their owners corporation if it's not looked after pretty quickly. Consider project management. There are great companies out there who handle, small, medium, large repair works. When I say small, sort of $10,000 and above. So consider more of that rather than sort of hoping the strata manager will be able to look after it all, because a lot of us strata managers are really good at doing, certain things, or they have a really broad skill set, but they're not the one-stop shop. You need to get the people on the right seats in the bus to manage this thing, and owners corporations do need a wide variety of different experts to help them from time to time. So I just hope people would recognise that.
Sounds good. Luke, tell me, where can people go to connect with you or to learn more about Pilot Body Corporate? Maybe hit the homepage of your website and check out that AI chatbot you've got going. Test it out.
Yeah, definitely give it a go. So we're on pilotbodycorp.com.au is our website. I'd love to see what you ask our chatbot and see if it gets it right. And I'm on LinkedIn for like professional connections. We're also active on Facebook, Instagram, and we've got a company LinkedIn page, and we share news and articles. You can subscribe to our newsletter, which we call Informer, and we push that every quarter. So you could subscribe to that on our website if you liked. And
Excellent.
you probably see me, I'm like full-time conferencing these days and part-time body corporate management. But
Oh, that sounds
just kidding.
good.
But I like to get out there and, meet other managers and learn what's going on in their worlds.
Yeah, so true. And be waving that banner for others to break up with big strata.
Yeah, well, definitely get on board, because I think it's happening. When you've got the CEO of the largest strata insurance company in Australia out there saying, well, I think it's happening. It's like gonna come through. Well, pretty good indication that that's where we're headed anyway. So I think we as an industry need to band together and just help the owners understand and the value of the work we do.
Yep. Well, thank you, Luke Woolard, for being here today to share that message with us. I love that you're here representing Victoria as well, and all our Victorian listeners who are always in my inbox saying, Amanda, what about answering this question about Victoria and taking a closer look at what's going on down here? There you go. Luke's your man.
Thanks, Amanda. Really appreciate you having me on today.
Pleasure to chat with you.
Thank you for listening to Your Strata Property, the podcast which consistently delivers to property owners reliable and accurate information about their strata property. You can access all the information below this episode via the show notes at yourstrataproperty.com.au.